Welcome to episode 27 of the Untalented podcast with Jessy Gill. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
It's all good. I'm very excited for this one. We've had lots of pre-conversations, so I hope it's going to be a great one. But without too much waffling, we'll start with my favourite way to start this podcast, which is 60 seconds of fun. Are you ready?
I don't know if I am, but I'm going to give it a go. Let's go.
Okay, let's go. 3, 2, 1. Favourite restaurant?
Oh my gosh, that's actually really hard. I'm going to say St. Best Jamaican because it's my friend's mum's Caribbean restaurant.
Great answer. Most frustrating app?
Oh my goodness. LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, great one. Least favourite colour?
Purple.
Sweet or savoury?
Oof, always savoury.
Favourite brand?
Tough. No Borders shop. South Asian platform. Maven.
Okay. City that everyone should know about that's not London?
Okay. Tel Aviv.
Do I look like a rat or a fish?
A fish. I couldn't say a rat. That'd be really mean.
Well, I've had rat once as well.
Really
and I was
rude.
like, New York rats. And I was like, I've seen
Ooh.
those and they're gross. Anyway, your career in a noise?
Skirt.
Great one. We did it. You got through
Is
it.
that it?
You
Oh,
didn't
great.
crumble. Okay,
Great,
so
great.
we'll kick things off because we've got a lot to cover here. But we'll start as we always start. Who was the first person who made you feel talented?
It's so funny because you could obviously go down the route that I've heard, I think, a few people say parents, right?
Yeah.
And I was going to go with that. So maybe there's two people, but my mum obviously has been a great inspiration, but I think for different reasons, because she was a woman who kind of went against the grain. So she had a divorce at a really young time, and being South Asian, like back in early 90s, it was kind of unheard of. So I think she was really incredible because she's got tattoos, cut her hair really short, was quite punk actually. And I think at that time for women to be like that, especially women within South Asian culture. So I guess that gave us permission to kind of almost like go against the grain, be a little bit more pirate. And I feel like she's always kind of encouraged us to do that, whether it be body confidence or creative confidence, because she's really creative. So definitely her. I can't not say my mum. She's probably going to watch this.
Yeah, she's got to watch it. Your mum's got to watch this.
She is. She messaged me this morning. She's like, good luck with it. However, I think industry-wise, I did a master's with Hyper Island. And Sarah Silverberg, I hope I'm saying her name right, she's actually like the daughter of the founder. And she taught one or two of the modules. And I think she was brilliant, actually.
Yeah.
Because I guess when you've been in like British English school, you must know obviously what that was like, and it's very kind of straight. I think for us to be doing like stinky fish exercises, and also I was like one of the youngest people, like there were like 40-50-year-old white men CEOs that were on this whole thing, and I think that I was just a bit like, but yeah, it really encouraged me. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So I think that kind of Swedish out of England mentality of like thinking about thought leadership, thinking about what you could do differently was great. Jump into circles and like scream, and it's weird, but it was great.
So the Nobody Wants to Work For You workshop is actually connected with Hyper Island. That's who helps us.
Even better.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, even better.
So obviously your mum was a big influence in you moving into a creative role. When did you realise that could potentially be a job for you?
So I did film and media at uni. We were the guinea pigs at my Met because I hadn't done that before. So I think in a way it kind of felt a little bit like a joke, like honestly, because I think we'd turn up to lectures and some of the lecturers wouldn't turn up to lectures. And so I suppose there was a degree of me kind of not knowing in which kind of path to take. Strategy wasn't even a term at that time. And so the moment that I guess I realized that it was going to be a decent career, or that like I was really excited by it, was I guess when I stepped out of uni. No, maybe just before, actually. I did an exhibition and I went to Manchester, so I did it in Moss Side. And that was brilliant because I think I was taking a lot of photography of people from the culture and the community, and then did the exhibition in a Caribbean community centre. Because at the time we didn't have South Asian ones.
Yeah.
And my lecturers came, and I think that's when I realised, and there was like so many incredible people. They had like steel bands being played. And I just think I was like, oh, so I could actually do something as part of a curriculum that actually feels like it's part of what I've grown up with.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, I suppose, when I was like, okay, you can marry creative and the culture that you come from in an interesting way, but obviously I wasn't being paid for that.
Yeah. It's funny because like we've had a couple of strategists on this podcast, as you know, and many of them sort of started out their career knowing they were creative in some way, but not really knowing how to connect that to like a profession. It's interesting because I think that the education system is getting better to educate people on, you know, creative strategy, what that looks like, you know, but probably when you were going through that process, there wasn't really too much talk of it, I assume.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like, I think I told you that I've always felt like a bit of a pirate. And when I was in Manchester, and then I spent quite a lot of my 20s within like Amsterdam and Manchester, because I was working, my first ever client was Asics and then New Balance. So did the whole kind of almost like Phil Knight journey, if you like. And at the time, I'm showing my age here, but digital didn't exist.
Yeah.
So I guess you had to kind of like figure out why somebody wanted to choose Asics trainers over New Balance trainers, by like going out or running with them, or like spending time with these tribes. Influencers is what we call them now. So I think it was really tough because there were planners, but I'd never ever done the orthodox route in. So I started at a digital agency, and so I didn't know what a 48 sheet was. I didn't know anything about traditional print. I think I've only really done advertising like the last kind of few years of my career. And so at that point, I think I would say I was just more of an anthropologist. Like I was obsessed with like people watching and studying culture and like getting under the skin of like why people moved the way they moved, shopped the way they shopped, and would fall into these like subgroups of culture all the time. So I think that was just natural. I naturally think I'm a strategist. Like people say it to me, like it's kind of part of your DNA. And so I suppose, what would that mean for people that want to train in it? I guess it's different. I think you can learn strategy, of course, but I think there's something innate in like certain strategists that like have this like innate curiosity and this desire to kind of be like, I really want to figure out what's going on over there. And that was what I did.
I think there's like practical things. Obviously you have to be a great writer to be a strategist. That's right. You know, so I think you could probably follow that route maybe, but I guess there's just a fierce determination to like understand things, you know, and work them out. That's what I've noticed in you know, the interactions that I've had with strategists. So you came out of university, sort of understood that could be a thing. Obviously you have traveled through some amazing agencies, Mother Design being one. You've also been in-house at Depop, which is like I'm sure a fascinating place to be. You know, what happened between that starting point and sort of going through that kind of cycle?
Yeah, good one. I guess a lot of travel. So that's the other thing I'd say as well about strategist and strategy, I suppose, is that like I think your insight needs to come from lived experience to a degree. That's the reason why I think that you get to come up with really brilliant stories. And you're right, like it's traditional, isn't it, that it's either like an account manager or an account director that then wants to become a strategist, or a copywriter that then does. I don't know where I sat, to be honest. I don't really think I was any of them. I think copy is something I've been trying to master, and I still am. I always go and like find the copywriter. So I guess I was somewhere in between. Like I think I was doing creative thinking, but also kind of helping a small digital agency kind of manage accounts. And I guess it started because I had to go and figure out again why Asics would be beneficial to these groups, and why at the time they were better than New Balance. So you had to go and speak to the runners. You had to go and like spend time with them. And so that, I guess, is where it began. And definitely wasn't called strategy. And then I worked in placemaking and architecture, which is like the biggest kind of like love of mine, and like I've always wanted to like get
that
further
really
into
surprises me, you know.
Really?
Yeah,
Why is that?
I don't know. I think a lot of your, you know, from what I know about your work, is very sort of centered around like youth culture and fashion and kind of lifestyle brands. Those don't, to me, they don't connect. There's no connecting point really. I'm sure there is, obviously, but yeah, I don't know why that surprises me.
Yeah, I mean, it's beautiful, right? Because I guess there really is this connection. And
Mm.
I suppose, so what was brilliant was like, so I just did Eastwick and Sweetwater. Well, not just, it was back in like 2018. My journey was that I was in Manchester and Amsterdam, second cities, if you like, and then felt like Manchester was too small. And I think at the time I was like, there is no way I'm moving to London. Like, I've totally sold out by doing that now. But I think I then got headhunted to go to Dubai and go to the Middle East.
Okay.
So for me, I suppose like there was this kind of like path that I followed, and there they did have a lot of the big agencies that had come over from the UK, like your TBWAs, your Landors, that were trying to make it really over there, and were doing strategy in a very traditional form, brand guidelines, you know, stuff for Emirates, stuff for all of the kind of like big Emirati type brands over there. And then I knew I was doing strategy. But I think the architectural piece was when I worked at an agency called Neighbourhood. And as part of placemaking, you had to figure out the kind of people that might live there. So we were branding the hipsters in Shoreditch before the hipsters in Shoreditch became the hipsters in Shoreditch. Like, you know, we actually like, there's so many incredible reports, but there was one that Nesta had done at the time, which was like the future personas of London 2025, which doesn't even feel that far away when I say it now. And they'd like almost looked at loads of people and what they'd be like. And we had to do that. So in order for us to, at the time we branded Here East, Eastwick and Sweetwater, which is where the new VNA is, which is where I live. So you'd kind of go macro to micro. You'd look at like the name of the neighborhood, the pockets of activity, how do people want to eat, drink, what's the kind of like cultural spaces that they're going to be in. And then I went and did that in the Middle East as well. And that was strategy, but it was kind of done through the lens of architecture and placemaking. So hopefully that connects the dots for you, Woody.
Yeah, of course. It's like, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because the whole placemaking thing is like, I think unless you're in that kind of space, people don't really know what it is. People have probably heard the term, you know, or seen agencies that have sort of done it. But yeah, I think it is a fascinating, because, you know, big cities will have like a big team of people to navigate, you know, the footfall. What's the most logical way for pedestrians to? I find that like really interesting. It's like a fascinating sort of thing.
It's a beautiful subject, like, and also you've got to imagine like going to somewhere like Dubai. I guess like they never thought of it of being this like, it's almost like mega, well, they thought of it being a mega city, but they did it around so many kind of icons. And so they never looked at a master plan of now wanting people to be able to walk around, of people being able to cycle. I think I was like the only person that was cycling around the marina and was being looked at like an absolute madhead because, you know, I'd spent time in Amsterdam and it was something I really enjoyed. Probably why I didn't last there very long either.
Well, I guess unless you've got, you know, everyone drives everywhere, surely. Yes, which is so I guess we've kind of gone beginning, middle, we're up to now. So Apna Studios is something that you're very proud of. I'd love to hear, or everyone to hear, more about what it is. Tell us more about Apna Studios.
Yeah, no, really exciting. And it's, you know, more of a recent venture. I think I came back from Dubai and you know, got convinced to move to London, which is incredible. There's no city like it. And when I joined, or when I came to London, actually, I was kind of like, I don't want to work for anyone. I just want to be able to do my own thing and see how that works. And so actually a headhunter recruiter suggested that I set up a limited company. And I was like, what am I going to call it? And because I had to do it like straight away, because I'd got like some really great work in, with you and I, again, placemaking, I just called myself That Girl, Jessy Gill. And I guess that girl was almost like the attitude that I suppose I wanted to embody. It gave me, I suppose, a little a little friction or an ability to feel like I was an outlier, but I was owning it. And so when people might speak, they'd be like, oh, who's that girl? Jessy girl. And that worked, you know, when you're in your early 30s or late 20s. But I think that then when I started working with people, because as you know, like strategy goes so far, and then you start bridging out and speaking to like incredible collaborators, whether it be creators or writers or makers. And I realized the name just wasn't going to work anymore. And so, yeah, Apna was born, and Apna means one of our own in my mother tongue, which is Punjabi. And I think for me, the reason why like I started that was because I'd been at these incredible, incredible studios and agencies, like such a privilege to have been able to like come to London, have a bit of gumption behind me to like hit up Duncan, who was like the head of Wednesday's like strategy and content at the time, and just like, I really want to work with you, and him being like, all right, cool, come in. You know, I think that was great, and I was able to kind of rebrand Hugo Boss with him and do some amazing work, design studio. But I think that I just didn't feel like I belonged in any of these places. I think that there was no one that looked like me at the level that I was working at, which was, you know, at board level, like director level. So I guess I started Apna so that I could be independent, be freelance, and work on a multitude of different things with like-minded people. And actually for us, it like represents inclusion and togetherness and a family. And it's always something I think I've wanted throughout my entire career, but have never had until now.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? I think that when you're in a full-time role, it doesn't really feel, it feels light years away to be sort of having your own studio or, you know, a collective, whatever it is. But actually, like, when you think about it, the practical steps to doing it are just bravery, I think. Ultimately, that's the only thing that holds people back. So yeah, anyone who starts their own studio, I'm always very like, you know, you've got, there's a lot of positivity that I feel, because it's like, it's a brave move, you know, it's a good thing to do. So I'm sure there was lots of nerves and lots of kind of scary times. How is everything going now? Like, talk us through sort of what you're up to.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Like bravery is definitely a term. Maybe a little bit of stupidity. And I think really conscious to call it a studio and not an agency as well, because it feels like there's a difference, isn't there, between like a studio and an agency? I suppose like a studio can be an atelier, a maker. You know, you've got places like IDEO or Space 10 right through to like Too Good that create chairs. I think I wanted us to have that freedom to be able to do whatever it was that came to our door. And so we have massive ambitions. But what we're doing at the moment is just like getting incredible community coming in and building with them. And I think that's amazing. Like we've worked on some brilliant projects, but we're also working on like more, like I'm talking to Nike around kind of South Asian sports. And that's the other thing as well that I think is a little bit tricky, because I was so conscious of the name. Because I didn't want us to be pigeonholed. And I think that's the thing that like we were really keen on looking at. So I remember when I was doing the brand identity like a year and a half ago and speaking to loads of friends, and we had like lots of different name options at the time, and everybody was like, lean into the fact that you've got something that's a differentiator. And so yeah, it's great. Like everything from like doing a launch event, which will be coming too.
Yes, definitely will.
And yeah, just kind of building the community angle of it. And I think that's what's so great. Like it gives me permission to get up every day knowing that that's the name that's on the door and like on my email. And being a little bit more intentional, I think, about connecting with more Black and brown creatives, and not just trying to do work that feels like it's just for that level of insight. So I think that's the other thing as well that is really important for us. Like the name might be on the door, but I think that we could get briefs right across the kind of sector. Whether it be football, which has been a big one, women's football has been huge. I think that's really exciting. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
I guess it's like there's something really interesting about an agency that has basically formed of people who don't belong anywhere else. I think that's like or don't feel like they belong. They belong anywhere, but you know, the feeling of belonging is, you know, personal. But actually then being able to utilize that skill set with briefs that aren't just for that community, you know, because it's like, obviously if someone was, you know, wanting to do a project for, you know, a specific community, they may come to you. But actually the more general things I think are more interesting, because actually then you can draw insight from a completely different area than a traditional larger agency would. I think that it's really unique, which is great.
No, you're absolutely right. And I guess that's the shift that needs to be made, is that you're not going to your like Packworks or, you know, some of the other agencies that have got really great kind of all like, you know, future proof, and a few of the others that are out there where you're kind of like, are they the ones that we need to go to because actually they're run by, you know, black men, or they kind of can bring us that cultural insight. And in reality, like, I think that they're the kind of agency studios, as we are, that want to get those really great chunky briefs from brands. Because you're right, like, I think that our lived experience is one aspect that we bring to the table, which is really brilliant, but equally so is kind of like the alternative way of thinking. Like, we also can answer a brief from an architectural placemaking opportunity right through to a rebrand of like a new music platform.
Yeah, of course. And I think you know, sort of summarizing on my point, it's the insights are more, you know, from a broader range, which I think that's the interesting part. It's not just taking insights for that community. It's like the insights should be more general for like everyone, you know, which I think is, you know, where you're coming at it. So obviously, you know, we talked a little bit about your background. I think a topic that I'm really keen to talk about on this podcast is like the future of creativity. I know that's something that you're very passionate about. What do you think the industry will look like in 10 years?
I think I'm scared to imagine it, Woody. No, I'm joking. I think it's going to be absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I think that there is going to be a real level playing field. And if anything, I remember speaking to Simon from Dixon Baxi on this, and he did this like series during lockdown.
Yeah.
And I suppose there's obviously a lot of conversations around AI, which we'll get into. But I guess for me, one of the major things that we learned was that during lockdown, and obviously during, you know, the protests with George Floyd and some of the movements, I guess it felt like a tokenistic gesture from quite a lot of brands and agencies that were kind of like, what do we do to support the Black or marginalized communities? Whereas now I think that actually there's no need for that. A lot of these brands, your No Signals, you know, some of the ones that are actually creating whole new ecosystems don't need that support. Actually, they're just going out there and doing it. So for me, it feels there's going to be loads more of that. And actually, I think it's about equity in ecosystems. I think that the equity source isn't going to stay with like the people that've got it at the moment. And I think it's going to be completely democratized, and it's going to be really exciting.
It does feel like the agencies you wouldn't expect to be tasked with briefs are getting them, which I think is really exciting, and it shows more bravery from brands, I think, which is really exciting, because there was that funny period of time, wasn't there, where it seemed like everyone was talking about, you know, doing something. I think it was just after, you know, we got back to work, everyone was hiring lots, everyone was talking about how important, you know, increasing diversity was. But for me, so obviously working in a recruitment role, supporting agencies, finding new talent, you know, every conversation that I was having was about that topic, which was great. And I was like, wow, we're seeing a real difference. But then the reality of the hiring didn't really change. So I think I agree that we are at a point now where it is changing and you're seeing it change, but I don't know if it's changing drastically enough. How do you feel about what I've just said?
I almost wanted to. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course you can.
Love that. Based on what you just said, I think that's so interesting because, you know, you had to deal with this kind of like dilemma, I suppose. This is me being a strategist, isn't it? Asking you a question. Sorry. How do you feel actually about the fact that, you know, you went through this moment in time where you felt like you had to like find quite a lot of diverse hires, and then let's fast forward now a few years, do you feel like that kind of is still there, and it's still the kind of momentum behind these brands, or has that been lost?
Yeah, it's a really good question because like I'll give a few situations. So I'd be working with a very successful branding agency that lots of people would want to work at, and I'd sometimes get a briefing where they'd be like, we need a woman of color for this role, which is a strange briefing initially because you know that's aggressively trying to push that needle, which I support, and obviously if we get that brief we'll do our best to find that person. However, my standpoint on this is we're always pushing the best talent we can, and ultimately we will provide a shortlist of the best talent. Sometimes that best talent isn't someone that they're looking for, and I think that often they're trying to hire someone in a leadership position in that role, and they don't really exist. Sadly, they don't exist.
No, they don't.
So what you have to do then is, it's a really uncomfortable conversation around, like, where is the compromise here? Where can you see a little bit of something that you don't want? Do you want this person to have big global brand experience? Because it's probably not going to happen. So there's lots of that communication in those processes. But I like the challenge of that, and it's meant, that's why Unknown exists. We exist to go further and find talent from different, that no one else is going to find. So that's a great brief for us, really. But the reality is it's very challenging and difficult to find.
Sorry, what was your question to me? And I'll answer it.
No,
now.
it's fine. So yeah, and you sort of just following on from what you said, we often get those briefs, and I think the consistency that people are looking for more diverse talent is still there. But the reality of the problem is that it's going to take longer than hiring 3 people into your business to change the face of the industry. So yeah, the ambition is there, I think, from a lot of agencies, from the best agencies. I think that the branding space, for example, is really pushing female talent, which is great, and that's something that I love working on. If anyone's listened to the podcast, also Unknown is very passionate about that. But the reality is it's challenging. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, but I gave it a go.
You did. You smashed it. Yeah, I think it's really unfortunate because I guess for me, where I've seen some of the most brilliant, diverse talent is at a really junior level.
Absolutely, yeah.
And, you've mentioned a couple of the places that I've worked at, but, you look at somewhere like Depop, the CEO, she's South Asian, You look at By Rotation, South Asian.
Yeah.
And just the most incredible, diverse range and cohort of people that are coming in. You're right. I do believe that there are some of these women that are stepping into these spaces that you're kind of like, it's beautiful for me to see. Like, I've reached out and connected with all of them just to be like, my goodness, you're amazing. How can we talk and what more can we do?
Yeah.
I think the thing that we spoke about though is that, and this is where I want to get to, where I want Apna to become and get to as a network as well, is that would love to be even like building a network of talent and helping them kind of grow, nurture, foster. Like, I do mentoring myself, but I want these people to be able to get to the level that I'm at, surpass me actually, because I think that is the only way that we're going to make change. And I also am one of the only women in the industry running a creative studio. Like, I think that there's incredible men that are men of color. There's usually 2 of them. You've got Tarek, Taro, Omrid, you've got Josh at Packworks, you've got a couple of other people that I know, like I just started Explorers Club. These are incredible people. Jojo at No Signal.
Andy and Matt have got to get a shout out from Modigy. They've been on
the podcast. Exactly. And I think for me, like, looking at them, it's incredible. But I also think, like, where are the women in this space? Especially the women of colour. And that's where I felt like a bit of a responsibility to start Apna, actually.
Yeah. And
it's tough because you do kind of like, it weighs on your shoulders somewhat. Like, I've worked in South Asian space for the last 18 months. I guess unconsciously was doing that, but consciously I've been doing that. And yeah, I don't see a lot of people at a really, really senior level walking in at strategy. You've got Hetafel, who's at Nike. She's incredible. But yeah, like really, really senior level. And I think the problem is is that we're not nurturing the talent enough. I think we know how to hire them. I say we because I'm trying to not make anyone feel alienated that I've worked at. But yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm sure they wouldn't mind me saying, like, I loved working at Mother. I went from Mother Design to Mother London, and, you know, they've got some incredible initiatives in-house. One of the best initiatives, and actually the reason why I actually said yes to taking on the contract role was because of a kind of collective in-house called Familiar Faces, which you should definitely listen to their podcast. And they are quite an incredible, successful group of junior strategists. And at the time, there were no creatives, and now there are. And I think the thing for me was that I'd join their groups and I'd go to the committees they do, and it was all about anyone that was a familiar face could join and have a space for them to feel like they belonged. You know, I was like the head of strategy at Mother Design at the time, and was going to this space with very junior members of staff who were brilliant. Like, they were the kind that were building their own podcast, doing their own initiatives, but they also needed looking after.
Yeah, of course.
And I don't think they'd mind me saying that. Like, where was their care? Where was their nurture? Where was their development to step into strategy director type roles?
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not just there, it's everywhere. Like, I think Mother are one of the most progressive, actually, because in a way, I think they stepped into their fragility and were like, look, we know we're acting probably a little bit fragile here and we need to do better.
Yeah.
And that comes from like Bob, Kate, Chris, etc.
Yeah, again, it's a topic that needs a lot of conversation and had a lot of conversation, as we've spoken about before. But why should the industry be more diverse?
Great question. I think at the moment now, if we're being really honest with ourselves, so much of the creative output comes from our cultures, whether it be sound, fashion, the talent that you use. You know, there's probably hip hop in most soundtracks for every advert that you see, even ones that you're like, that is a feminine underwear brand. Do you really need hip hop in that?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, adds a punch. But I think for me, like, I even look at the fact, like, I'm part of Soho House, and I also look at the entire kind of space and the culture that, like, the Black and brown community bring to those kind of spaces. Like, that's why we need to have more diversity, because actually the stuff that's landing, the stuff that's converting brands, the stuff that is shifting culture is all coming from our culture. It's like we should be the ones that are not only, I suppose, giving the insight, we should be the ones that are like leading those studios and those agencies. And we should be getting all the briefs. And for me, I don't think it's about siloed, actually. And that's the difficult thing. I think that if anything, we as a community and communities, we're not a monolith. So I say South Asian and it's so big. Like,
well, of course, yeah.
I like, you know, learning about the Tamil culture over the last 18 months. And I confess that I didn't know enough about that. Like, having friends from Sri Lanka have like educated me. Like, I used to say Indian, like, with this like blanket kind of statement. And it's like, I can't do that. You can't do that. You have to understand the diaspora and the binaries, and like how Nigerian culture is so different to Ghanaian culture, like the sounds, the food, the rice, you know. I think that that's the nuances that we bring to the table that I think that you don't get without that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think you hear people use this explanation at all, but it's like the consumer of products, you know, essentially is not one person or even one demographic. It's thousands of different demographics, millions of different people. So actually the makeup of a studio should be as closely related to whoever you're trying to speak to. Yes, that's impossible in some situations, but, you know, the dream situation is that you've got a collection of people who would never have met before unless they went into this, you know, space. That is my idea of like a perfect agency, you know, a collection of people who, unless that space existed, would never come together. I guess that's, you know, hopefully Apna would be close to that in a way. But
our motto is like, it's at the bottom of our website. It's like, you know, sometimes we're the audience, often we're the creators. And yeah, we're also the brand. Like,
Yeah.
we literally go across all those disciplines. I think it's a brilliant point that you've made. And you're absolutely right. Like, that is the reason why I think that but it can't be a case, I suppose, of just kind of offering the insights to these studios and these agencies and then being like, wicked, hope you do a good job with that. Because I think that's where it gets lost in translation. Like, legitimately, I believe that strategy to design and the future of creativity is that real blend with actually, like, starting with a community and working your way backwards. That's our motto. That's what we do. Like, we literally give them the equity, give them the power. Like, if I could say what Apna would be going forward, like, I would absolutely love to set the briefs in the community and then go and find the brands to partner with. Like, that's my objective. That's the future, I think, of where we're heading, is that actually, like, your collectives are going to be the ones that come up with everything. I mean, it's already happening.
Yeah.
If we're honest, like, you look at your Diet Brata, you look at the Rave Culture Daytimers, they're now getting the briefs from, like, Levi. NTS, they've got their own creative studio.
Of course, yeah.
Like, you know, I think that's it. Like, these lot are getting like 100 to 150 grand briefs.
Yeah.
Taking it away from your other agencies, and I think it's brilliant.
It is great, and I think it's broken an old-fashioned system. You know, it's put big, you know, dents in a what many would have seen as being a bulletproof kind of beast. You know, you don't have to follow the same cycle as, you know, someone who did 30 years ago in advertising. You know, if you are a creative person, you can come up with ideas, and that, you know, that's the simple fact of it, really. The execution, obviously, there's technical you know, aspects of it, but you can learn that stuff if you know, have a good mentor. But, you know, we're all creative in some way. It's just trying to harness it, I guess, is the challenging part. So one thing that I want to get sort of more, well, we'll get more practical in it shortly, but what do you think is the main blocker for more diverse talent sort of getting into the industry?
Yeah. Sorry, I've had that horrible cold.
It's right.
Gosh, there's a few. I think accessibility is probably the biggest thing. And I think it comes down to a few things. We spoke about this earlier around kind of like the lineage of you know, being children of immigrants. So I suppose understanding that actually it's a really lucrative career, just financially. Let's just talk about that for a moment. Like, you know, the creative and strategy kind of day rates that people are able to charge these days is like absolutely brilliant. And I think that the salaries that then come with that are great. However, and I remember going for a really brilliant consultation, which was great when we were going back to work at Mother during lockdown. And one of the things that I fed back was like, bear in mind that you're asking people to travel to Shoreditch, and Mother are great because they offer food. You know, you get your lunches provided. Miss those lunches. But I suppose when you think about the fact that someone's spending, you know, maybe even 14, 15 quid a day to travel, like, it's things like that I don't think the agencies think about. Like, they have really desirable locations, they have incredible lifestyles, but if somebody's on a salary of maybe even minimum wage of 18k, or, you know, something that's in your 20s, it's so hard to rent, to then actually think about the fact that maybe even some of these people are supporting their families. So they might be supporting them in their mother country or even here. So they might have grandparents that live in the same house as them, as well as parents. And I think that understanding in a really kind of like a really obvious way, without it feeling like, oh, we need to be really like tiptoe around some of the diverse talent that we hire. Not really. It's just an understanding of some of the pressures that come. So I think the financial pressures of living in somewhere like London, of wanting to work in a creative industry, but also understanding what they need to do is one. And then, I think it's all kind of falls under accessibility. But I think the other thing is that we need to get into the schools. Like, we need to go in there and tell people how incredible our careers are. Because I guess these students and their families don't really know how lucrative it is. I remember when I worked on the V&A, kind of like the anniversary with Benisha Kelly, who's incredible. And we did a South Asian takeover, which was amazing. What was brilliant about what they were thinking about doing was promoting a lot of the exhibition in Southall. And then they were thinking about, well, what's the transport that we'd get to the V&A and back again, because we want the aunties and the uncles and everybody there. So I think it's stuff like that, when if you think a little bit kind of like outside the box, it's like, how would you get that talent to feel like they can actually come, do their job without stressing about everything else that's going on in their life?
Yeah, it's so true. And I think that, it's important to speak about the other side. The industry for a long time was filled with, predominantly quite privileged
middle class white men.
Yeah. And I think that it sort of set this kind of unrealistic precedent for what a junior person in the industry should expect to see. I don't know too much about, the financial, industries or, law, but I'm sure that those, yes, they're probably populated with the same sorts of people, but I'm sure that, the entry level roles are the expectations, financial expectations are higher. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think there's another, there's a I need to look at the top of my laptop here but this is a charity called Vital Hardware.
Nice.
And it's run by one of the founders of your studio, who we were speaking about before. But essentially what they do is they collect old machines from agencies and donate them to schools so that children can do creative work on machines.
Love
because it's like a £2,000 laptop. Who's going to be able to afford that for their child if you're a single parent family? It's like,
yeah, but I mean, look at the smartphones.
Yeah,
this is where I say that I believe that it's just been democratized.
Yeah.
I actually feel like now, you're right, those laptops are crazy, but like now everyone that I know like has either a Samsung or an iPhone.
Yeah.
And I suppose with that alone, the level of content and creativity that can happen is actually brilliant.
Yeah.
Like I love the idea of that charity. I also think, I suppose, there's like a real need to nurture talent.
Yeah.
There's no way that people are going to become directors and like be at board level unless we all take some responsibility and have a good look at the makeup of our studios and our agencies and of really ask yourself that question, like, does this represent the kind of work that we're bringing in?
Yeah.
When you've got your Nikes or your Spotifys, you've got massive global accounts, Facebook, Meta in general, like, do you have the right to have an all-white team to work on that?
Yeah.
When you're representing a third of the world's population?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I've just had 3 questions that I want to ask you.
Please.
I'll try to remember all of them. But what is your stance on like positive discrimination?
Oh, I was going to actually talk about that earlier.
Yeah.
I think it's necessary. I do. I think it's tricky. I don't think I'm probably going to get slandered for this, but I don't think.
Go for it.
I don't think that we're far enough in order for us to say, listen, everything's equal.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's true. I would love some positive discrimination towards many of the people that I either mentor or that are coming up in the industry. I would have loved it probably towards myself at some point, because I feel like it's not a level playing field yet. Once we get to that stage, great. I think that unfortunately I still get approached to do Heritage Month. I get approached to do stuff for Diwali. I get approached to look at like really great campaigns at like a really typical calendar level.
Yeah.
Or like, do you want the South Asian brief, like I mentioned? No, I want more than that.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a level of positive discrimination that I think is still needed for us.
Yeah, it's like, because obviously I've been on the receiving end of what some would say is positive discrimination, but I think I'm with you. I think that there's the reality of the situation, but there's also coming at it in a different way, which I think is hopefully gonna help the industry. Do you think that agencies or the industry, let's use, are doing enough to attract a more diverse range of creatives?
Absolutely not.
Okay, that's a clear answer to that one.
I think that we could definitely kind of give people a few high fives, but you're asking me about this future that we're talking about. You're asking me about what utopia looks like and what great can be. And I don't think anyone's being brave enough to do great. I think that a lot of people are doing okay, and that they feel like, hey, you know, we've got like 1 to 3% of our kind of makeup of our teams that are at a junior level, that are doing strategy or creative or whatever it might be. I don't think that's enough. I think that we need to be doing way more. And actually, I think we need to be thinking at a global level. We need to be having those conversations like right across the globe. Like, I can't wait to be doing more work in the eastern part of the world, not the western part of the world, because I think that's where progress is really happening. And I would love to see your Widens, your Mothers, but your Brown Studios kind of almost having those conversations and collaborating in that way. So I guess that's why I said it with such intention, to be like, absolutely not. There is so much more that can be done.
Yeah, and I think that it comes from having people within the studio who know how to communicate with a more diverse range of people. You know, it's part of me feels sorry for HR directors or, you know, chief talent officers of agencies, because they're getting pressure to change stuff, and it's like, I've got no idea how to even communicate with a more diverse range of, you know, I think the ambition is there, but also you need to make positive steps in the right direction to make a change. I'm really keen to talk about our new workshop, which is called Nobody Wants to Work for You, which is clearly a controversial name, but it's meant to be controversial. I think that, just as a bit of a kind of backstory, the reason that this workshop started is because, you know, we do believe, and we've heard via conversations, that the industry may have lost its charm to more of a diverse range of, you know, creatives. There's a lot of, you know, we've spoken about this before, but like, do creative people feel like they belong within the creative industry? You know, that's like that's a worry, and not the creative industry as a whole, but, you know, creative agencies, which I think is more of the question. I think, do you think the creative industry has lost its charm?
Ooh. No, I'm so excited about it.
Okay, great.
No, really excited about it. First of all, great title for the workshops. And I think that's the attitude that we're all embodying. Like, nobody wants to work for you because they can work for themselves and they can work with each other. That's the thing that I'm the most excited about.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't think it's lost its charm. I just don't know whether or not whether you need to shift your lens of like where you're looking, because some of those kind of names that we can all drop and we can talk about, I don't think the charm exists there anymore.
Yeah.
I think the charm actually exists elsewhere. And that's the thing that I'm the most excited about. Having gone to like Dubai again, and, you know, Soldier SB is incredible. It's like this streetwear cultural music convention, and like you're hearing Arab sound, looking at Arab fashion, looking at like these new cohorts of brands, like one that I'm wearing, and I think I'm going, wow, like, where are you lot going to be? Like, I was there in 2016.
Yeah.
To go back in 2022 and be like, okay, that's really interesting jump.
Yeah.
Like, I look at London now and go, all right, cool, let's go.
Yeah. I think that, you know, there's talking a little bit about the, you know, the topic we were on before. I think everyone talks a lot about attracting diverse talent, you know, and how do we, you know, this new generation of creators, which is a great conversation, but, you know, I think the thing which gets missed a lot is actually the retention of diverse people, and the retention of brilliant creative people who don't then feel like they belong somewhere because they're the only person of color in an agency. You know, everyone goes to the pub at lunchtime and they're actually Muslim. You know, it's like, or, you know, things that culturally for myself is, you know, that's been part of my culture for many years, but actually you need to look beyond that, you know, to actually help and retain people. What is your thoughts on that kind of retention piece?
I think it's so important. It's the reason why I have started Apna, because I, again, like I said, no one tried hard enough to retain me, even at the level that I was working at, right? So you can only imagine what it's like for the turnover of staff at a junior level. Have you heard of the scheme that they had at at Virgin, which was called reverse mentoring.
No, but it sounds great.
It was amazing. I feel bad that I cannot remember her name. I even wrote it down on my phone, but I'm terrible with names, so
Yeah.
I will tell you about it. But there was this incredible Black woman that actually started the initiative, and what it meant was that a lot of staff from a diverse background, I don't, even using that word is crazy because I guess we all come from diverse, but anyway, but yes, they basically then started mentoring the CEOs of the business, and what that gave the leaders was exposure, I suppose, to so much of what was going on. What I would like to see is that then there is a real clear succession path for some of those people then becoming the next director, CEO, leader. And yeah, that's the kind of stuff that I want to be doing for sure.
Yeah, it's such a, there's so much that can be done with that as well. That area of, mentoring is important for everyone. Everyone needs a mentor.
I need one too, if you know anyone.
Yeah, I could definitely set you up with some mentors.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's, you can get so much value, but also on the reverse side, if you're mentoring someone very junior, we come up with all these weird incentives, but it was called Old Dogs New Tricks. And basically it was connecting someone very senior and someone very junior and them teaching each other, about the industry. It never really got off the ground because it was a very early stage of unknown. But it's always something that we've really, we'd really sort of love to do. But yeah, that mentorship is but I love that kind of idea would be.
It's great. But how do they become the next leaders? That's the thing, right? Because yes, teaching an old dog new tricks is great for the old dog.
Yeah.
But what happens to the person that's sharing that wisdom and kind of doing that entire, like, it's quite an emotional thing as well, I think. When what you're doing is code switching every single day. You're going in and probably not speaking the kind of slang that you would, the language that you would, dressing the way you would. And I think that more of that would be really great. I feel like there is so much equity and finance within these businesses that go into like pretty dead training, if I'm really honest.
Yeah.
And I feel like it shouldn't just be the job of the DEI person or the HR person. However, there are so many incredible schemes that I think we could put into practice. I'm here if anyone wants to talk to me about them. But I think that, if we did more of that and we offered people those real, almost like you do business management. Yeah. Like in some of those more archaic industries, that we need to take some of that learning and think about how we do that with our talent.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that we hear a lot of kind of conversations around diversity. We hear a lot of people raising it as an issue, like it's the first time that people have, heard of it. The thing that I've never really heard is someone giving practical advice to agencies, to creatives, to, to help them, to help this issue. What, like, one piece of practical advice could you give, like an agency, for example?
It's gonna have to be financial.
Okay.
I think that I would genuinely say collaborate and put your money out there with studios, agencies, businesses that are doing stuff that you can't. Yeah. Like, I think as opposed to bringing in, and that's where the freelance thing is really interesting. I mean, there's some places that do it incredibly well, like Anyways, it's nice that. Yeah. But I do believe that you need to have those people in your studio, like you said, in full-time roles, level them up, and then equally put your finances into other businesses. So if you don't do research in-house, who else could you be working with that is Black or brown owned? Yeah, because it feels like there is this kind of, you're obviously at the forefront of this, but like a movement of small studios or collectives starting where those people feel like they belong together, And I think that agencies, you're right, could invest in working with those agencies to have those cultural insights. I think it could be like a, I love that. What else? Give me one more practical. Ooh, what else would I say? Legitimately, I think it's probably about finding a program that works for when you, because like you said, finding that diverse talent is brilliant. It's the retention part. Yeah. I think what a lot of agencies and brands could do is bring in people like me or other really strong leaders and offer some sort of like scheme for any of the diverse talent that you bring in, or they're going to have to start hiring these people. I think the problem that you said and that we've all recognised is a shortage of us.
Yeah.
So if there's a shortage of us and we're all doing our own thing, then you're going to have to start building that talent up.
Yeah, and that's from a grassroots level, isn't it, I guess? And then definitely. Okay, we're gonna come on to the final section, but what is give me one thing that pisses you off about the industry at the moment.
The industry then, not generic.
No, we're gonna go on to that.
I was trying to not say something that pisses me off about the industry. I think it's going to have to be the tokenistic nature of our industry. Like, it really pisses me off, actually, because I don't think it's necessary.
Yeah.
I think we need far more original creativity. I think we need to stop doing the same shit. Can I say shit?
You can say shit.
Great.
You can say any of those.
I don't know if I could swear.
Is expletives? Expletives? Is that a
Yeah,
word?
maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, go for it.
Yeah, I think we need to stop doing the same shit because the creativity is coming out the same.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's not just within these middle-class white-owned agencies that we talk about, although predominantly they're all starting to look the same. Like, all the adverts are starting to look the same.
Yeah.
The brands are starting to look the same. I think that we all need to be talking to each other way more.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the thing that really is winding me up. Like, I can't bear seeing some of those ads that are out there at the moment, and I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Like, why have you used that song? Why have you used that model or that talent? Why is that the language that you're using? And it comes from, and this comes from pure experience, a lot of white male creative directors.
Yeah, this is something that I was talking about with a friend of mine recently, but it feels like there's a lot of kind of big brands doing big TV ads where they're almost like that there is tokenism within the advert. You know, it's like you see 6 different people, all, different, races, sex, there's always a gay couple in there. I feel like surely everyone is noticing that there doesn't seem like there's any sort of like genuine insight into that. It feels lazy. It feels lazy to me. What do you think about that?
I think that's the job of a strategist.
Yeah.
I don't mean to put it on our heads. And a lot of us will be doing that.
Yeah.
But I do think our job is to bring that nuance, that richness, that diversity, that flavour to the creatives so that they can actually like go forth with actual truths. Insights don't exist, Woody. Like, come on. Like, insight reports, none of them are original.
Yeah.
And I think I've stopped using that language in our studio because there's a few times in my entire career that I've really unearthed proper insight.
Yeah.
I think the DJ Khaled campaign I worked on recently was a dream, but I think we really unearthed something for the Middle Eastern youth. And that's because it was like new and fresh. And I worked with a white middle-class creative director called Martin. He's absolutely epic because he was like, I don't know what a 16 or 17-year-old Arab boy and girl want.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that you're telling me what those nuances are, and we need to speak to them.
Yeah.
So for me, that's the reason why you're getting the tokenistic kind of like, have we got a tick box here of, a Muslim person? We met that quota.
Yeah.
And if as long as we've met that quota with our talent, then it looks like we've hit everything that we need to.
Yeah.
I don't think that's it. I think we need to go back to the story that we want to tell.
Yeah. But do you think because sometimes I'm getting caught between, is it the brand that's asking for this, or is it the agency that's saying, I would advise you to do this?
It's the brief. So it's both.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's the beauty of why I love working at Apna, because we challenge the brief constantly.
Yeah.
And it's actually the most brilliant thing about everything we do. And where we get to is great, but I suppose the brand will set the brief and it's very generic.
Yeah.
One of my favorite brands ever is Nike. I've done some exceptional work with them. But I remember a brief that I got on World Cup with them, and even that, we had to question them and be like, why are you saying her?
Yeah.
Is that the language you want to use? And they were so open and so receptive and so brilliant. So we got to push them. It's our job. We have to do that. And I think agencies that are being lazy are kind of going back and meeting the brief.
Yeah.
But that is where the strategist comes in.
Yeah.
That is where like we should be like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
And like, we should also do enough research so that we question that. Like,
for sure.
I don't go on TikTok. I don't use it because I'm not that generation. Whereas I will work with some brilliant young creatives.
Yeah,
and I'm
yeah.
like, tell me what's going on in TikTok. Like,
yeah, I can't be on it. No way. It would take over my life. My brain is so programmed for that scroll.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've reached the final section.
Okay.
Which is, well, I'm going to call it elephant in the room now. It used to be called elephant vomit. Then it got changed
Vomit?
to, I don't know, ask Ollie. It got changed to stinky fish, which you spoke about earlier. So I was like, oh, we can actually call it that. But what is the thing you're going to bring? What is something that you hate that you want eradicated from the earth?
Where am I? Mobile phones.
Mobile phones?
Yeah. And hate's a strong word because I understand how brilliant they are. But legitimately, I feel like they are destroying human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like I would do whatever I could to like not be on it for as long as I could.
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, I think I worked with Apple, one of my first ever clients.
Yeah.
And everything was so simple. Like you could go in and within one box, that was Steve Jobs' entire philosophy, wasn't it? Like his sister was trying to buy a laptop at the time, couldn't find one because Microsoft had 10 different variations. And he was like, right, there needs to be something done about this. You could go and get one thing. For me now, I feel like it's the additions, everything that goes with it, everything on top as a product. And then the fact that it's just consuming us.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
My family and I do what we can to like put our phones away. But like, you know, even when I'm dating people and they like pick up their phone in the morning and I'm like, that's crazy to me. Like,
yeah.
I obviously am guilty of it at times, but I'm forcing myself to break that habit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to connect with humans.
You can get those phones. Have you seen them that are literally just like old school phone?
Like Nokia?
Just yeah. You
Yeah,
can
love
but
a
they're
Nokia.
like they're so tiny. They're like that big, super thin. I was like, I'd actually love to use one of them.
Should we do it?
Let's
Social
do
experiment.
Let's do it. That's a.
Oh my gosh, we should do that and test it out.
We should do it and only work from laptops. I guess that would work, wouldn't it?
I think that would be absolutely beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
I'm here for it. But yeah, hate's such a strong word because they're brilliant at the same time.
I know. You kind of need them nowadays, don't you? But anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've had a thoroughly enjoyable chat. I think there's some great stuff that you sort of covered. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
I love it. Amazing.